So, it comes as no surprise that Spider-Man 3 wasn't exactly received all that well, but Treyarch wasn't through just yet. They kind of already had a foot out the door though, but they decided to go ahead and team up with another studio and get one more game out there. And that's how we got to Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
So, while Treyarch was certainly involved in the creation of Web of Shadows, the majority of the game's development was helmed by a studio called Shaba Games. In the past, they had assisted in the development of games in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, which, yeah, sounds familiar, doesn't it? According to Chris Schultz, the studio head of Shaba Games, one of the elements they wanted to focus on the most for this entry was combat, which is something I've been bickering about for the past few reviews, so you can imagine how happy that makes me. The studio wanted to take full advantage of the character, letting the player fully realize the mobility and strength of Spider-Man, thus creating a swift and flowing combat system that prioritizes constant movement and bridging the gap between web swinging and fighting. The result offers up some of the best controls seen for the character thus far, but this of course leads into another important aspect. How does the setting and design of the game itself take advantage of these polished mechanics? The answer? Invasion. Back in Spider-Man 2000, I praised the game for the threat of the symbiote invasion, noting that the implication alone was a terrifying idea. Well, this game showcases that horrific outcome to its fullest extent. Web of Shadows deals less with trying to prevent such a catastrophe, and instead focuses on Spider-Man, several other heroes, and even a handful of villains trying to fight back against the aftermath. We also see Spider-Man donning his popular black suit once again, introducing an element to the story that calls the webhead's moral code and lingering dark side into question. While struggling with the overwhelming odds of the symbiotes taking over the city, Spider-Man is also spending the game battling his inner demons and trying not to let the symbiote suit take over his mind. So, how does the game tackle all this? Well, spoilers ahead, because we're about to find out. The game begins, and the city is in chaos. Well, that didn't take long. Spidey is in distress and goes on a bit of a rampage trying to find Mary Jane while symbiotes are running around and remodeling the city a bit. When he finds her fighting for her life with Luke Cage, it becomes clear pretty quickly that Spidey isn't exactly on everyone's good side at this point. Shortly after, the wall crawler is bombarded with symbiotes and a mysterious figure saunters toward him. And then the flash forward ends and we're shown how this whole mess began. One day, Spider-Man and Venom are fighting each other. Truly, we're breaking new ground with this narrative. During the conflict, it seems like Mary Jane was injured, and in his desperation, Peter somehow absorbs a part of Venom's symbiote and regains the black suit. Using the symbiote to his advantage, Spidey knocks Venom around through means I'm sure are voiding a few warranties. And the hulking big boy runs off when Peter gets distracted, checking if Mary Jane is okay. MJ is taken to the hospital and Spider-Man follows. When they arrive, however, a few cars pull up and...
Congratulations! You just won front row seats to a game war!
Luke Cage, one of my personal favorite Marvel characters, arrives and gives the webhead a hand in taking out the gangsters. He explains that the gangs in the area have been at each other's throats recently, and that he needs Spider-Man's help to try to make sure the streets are safe again. Knowing Mary Jane would want him to go do his job in the city, Pete lets the doctors do their thing and swings off to go help Cage out. Cage sends Spidey out on patrol to take out gang members that have been causing problems around the city, and look at this. Witness it. See how beautiful it is? When Shaba and Treyarch decided to focus a bit more on combat in the game, they absolutely stole my heart because this is about as satisfying as it gets. The animations are fantastic with a great balance of weight and fluidity to them. The sound effects are all powerful and crunchy, if that descriptor works, and the variety of moves does not disappoint. Throughout the game, as you beat up thugs and complete certain objectives, you earn experience points that can be used to unlock areas in a skill tree, giving Spider-Man new moves and abilities. Some are shared, but some moves are specific to what suit you're wearing at the time. See, in Web of Shadows, you can swap between the classic red suit and the powerful black suit at any time you want, even if you're smack dab in the middle of painting someone's face black and blue. The red suit has a bit more elegance, prioritizing speed and movement, whereas the black suit is all about strength, and what it lacks in speed, it gains in power and symbiote style. Some of the moves you're able to pull off are absolutely ridiculous too, just look at this nonsense. The one move you'll be using above all others is known as the Web Strike. This move pulls you into enemies from a distance and is great for keeping things moving. Spider-Man never has to lose his momentum because he can swiftly move from one enemy to the next with the push of a button, and this can even be followed up with a variety of other moves. There are times throughout the game when it feels like the developers were becoming a bit too reliant on the web strike, and there will be stretches where it feels like it's about all you're doing. Still, it's a great way to bridge the gap between the web swinging and punching bad guys in the face. Speaking of web swinging, things have been shifted a bit this time around. Now, I love the way web swinging works in this game. I think that the sense of speed and mobility is great, and I have a blast just going around the city, but it's far from flawless. Part of that comes from the fact that the webs aren't always attaching to objects nearby like they have been in the past few games. You still need to be near a building and below the top level in order to shoot a web, but the webs don't always grab onto solid objects like before. This actually does make moving through the city a little faster, and I think it's still tons of fun, but you can tell they were really trying to maintain the illusion that the web swinging still played by the same rules as Spider-Man 2. The funny thing is, they did a good job at that. I've been playing Web of Shadows for years, but not once did I notice that my webs were grabbing onto clouds made of invisible convenience until I was recording footage for the review when my friend Luke pointed it out to me. Does it ruin the web swinging for me in this game? No, not really, but I'm still left to wonder why it was done this way. Now, one little thing that does help make swinging around the city a bit more fun is the large amount of little spider emblems you can find. These shiny little buggers are just hanging out all over Manhattan, and once you've collected enough of them, Spider-Man levels up a bit, increasing stats like your attack power and defense. This is great because it gives you more reason to explore, but has the added benefit of making you stronger. This leads us to missions though. In the past few games, the majority of time the player would spend around the city was focused on stopping petty crimes and stuff of that nature, and that's still here, but it's contextualized. Whatever's going on in the story usually dictates the missions that are going to be available to complete, and I actually like this setup. There's a certain level of variety that comes with it. In the beginning of the game, you might be stopping a speeding gangster, but towards the end, you're guarding refugees as they try to make their escape to rescue vehicles. It's not perfect. A lot of the missions are very similar to one another, but I find that these tasks that you're given to progress the narrative are actually few enough that before long, you'll be moving on to the next plot point and new types of activities will open up. Speaking of moving the story along, once Spider-Man has stopped enough of the gang chaos, Luke tells the webhead that the gangs have decided to agree to a parlay. When the boys in tights arrive though, the Iraq Knight discovers that the entire parlay was set up by some unknown third party who sent a legion of snipers out to kill the gang leaders, which would spark the whole gang war anew. The web slinger quickly takes care of the snipers and...
We had a deal.
I gotta do what I gotta do. With or without me, my crew's taking down the Sevens!
I said no guns.
Oh, right. So, Web of Shadows has this kind of choice system in its narrative. At key moments throughout the story, the player is asked to make a decision to follow the direction of the black suit and act more rashly, or heed the responsibility of the red suit. I'm honestly not crazy about the way this was implemented. It feels a bit too easy to have the player act however they wanted throughout the game and chalk up such a big branch of the plot into a choice that just sort of comes out of nowhere. I think it would have been a bit more effective if maybe the game chose what played out for you depending on how often you use the black suit or by how you decide to solve certain problems. But I can see how some other people might have an issue with that and might even see it as railroading. Though, I would just see it as logical consequences to the action of the player. This does mean that a lot of the elements of the story change depending on what choice you make, but for the purpose of this review, time, and my sanity, I'm really just going to be covering the obvious canon storyline, which would be Spider-Man taking the path of the red suit. It should be noted that there's still some pretty neat stuff that happens in the black suit storyline, and I'd recommend now that you give that a shot and get a few surprises in. So, Spider-Man intervenes and lets everyone know they've been set up, quelling the growing fire between the two gangs. That's one problem out of the way, but a new mystery to solve. Who sent the snipers? Given the high-tech equipment the strike team had, Spidey decides the most logical answer would be the kingpin of crime himself, Wilson Fisk. Once he makes it to Fisk Industries, he sees someone leaving the facility and please just kill me now. Yes, it's a character chase. Yes, it's with Black Cat, and yes, it does feel tedious. You can't catch up with her until the game wants you to, and then they just have a few little slapfests, and we see the return of QuickTime events, cause that was sort of a thing in the game industry at that point. Spidey eventually tracks Black Cat at her home, and now I'm just wondering what teenage girl they got to write this dialogue.
I was doing it for you, so you would see that we were made for each other.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had no idea you still felt like that.
Really? Well, guess what? I do. I still love you.
No, really, this sounds like it belongs in that CW reimagining of Archie. Back in the Spider-Man 2 review, I said that Black Cat was one of my least favorite Spider-Man characters. Well, here's Exhibit A for why. She's often just the love triangle character, and at a certain point in time, I can't keep pretending I have patience for what I think is one of the laziest and most overused plot devices in history. Plus, if you're playing in the Red Suit storyline, she's not really going to be all that relevant again until the end of the game. In her defense, Felicia Hardy works as a temptation character. In a story where Spider-Man is dealing with the symbiote messing with his head and priorities, it would seem like a missed opportunity not to bring Black Cat into play here. She doesn't value responsibility, she values freedom, making her a perfect contrast between the life Peter might secretly yearn for and the life he knows is right. If you play through the Black Suit storyline, she makes a bit more sense here, so yeah, I might not like Black Cat, but I don't hold it against this game for using her. I just don't like any character that's remotely like her, no matter what story it is, so that's just my bias right there. Spider-Man's concerns have been confirmed by all this, and it seems as though Kingpin is trying to set something in motion. But not even Wilson Fisk is prepared for what follows. As the Webhead is trying to fight off some of the Kingpin's goons, civilians start climbing the walls, running around on all fours and attacking Spider-Man. Of course, the police just see the wall crawler beating up civilians and think he's gone off the deep end. Everything really starts getting into full swing here. As the game progresses, Spider-Man discovers that the Venom symbiote seems to have totally taken over Eddie Brock and is now working under its own agenda. It's creating pods that start propagating symbiotes in droves, and the invasion has truly begun. Symbiotes start taking people over, civilians are being taken off the streets, heroes like Moonlight and Wolverine join the fight and can even be summoned in to help Spider-Man fight in missions, and S.H.I.E.L.D. gets involved and starts creating quarantine zones, trying to get some control over the situation. Suddenly, Electro shows up trying to find his sister who was taken into one of the quarantines. Once he finds her, however, the symbiote attached to her latches onto Electro, and guys, all bets are off now. Superpowered individuals are getting taken over by symbiotes, and it's becoming increasingly clear that nobody is safe. The city gets closed off with nobody allowed to enter or leave, and Fisk makes a pretty valid point here.
Where are all the good guys? Where's Richards? Stark? Some so-called genius that will get rid of these things.
Try Stark.
Hello, this is not the person you were trying to call. You've reached the rejection hotline.
With few options left, Spider-Man decides that if he can't find a genius hero to help, he'll need to get a villain and tries to break the Tinkerer out of prison, hoping that he can create a sonic bomb that can kill the symbiotes without harming their hosts. He doesn't get very far with the crazy old guy before S.H.I.E.L.D. tries to stop him, but Wilson Fisk is able to convince Black Widow that Spider-Man might actually have the right idea here. S.H.I.E.L.D. and eventually Wilson Fisk end up helping supply the Tinkerer with what he needs to develop the bomb, and all the while, Spider-Man tries to help the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents around the city rescue as many uninfected people as possible. He's able to beat some sense into Electro and help him overcome the symbiote infecting him, but as the symbiote hordes gain more control over the battlefield, more characters start getting taken over, including Black Cat and even Wolverine himself. Spider-Man defeats and helps Wolverine, and the Tinkerer finishes the bomb. He then reveals that the bomb is only going to be effective enough to solve their crisis by setting it up on top of a building made of a certain substance, letting it act as a sort of conduit. S.H.I.E.L.D. makes preparations to set the bomb up, and Spidey helps get people to a safe distance. He's had to make a lot of tough choices here today. He's freaked out plenty of people, broken the law by breaking a dangerous man out of jail, and kept the symbiote suit after Mary Jane warned him and asked him again and again to get rid of the thing, which catches us up to the flash forward from before. The mysterious figure that attacked Spider-Man was the symbiote-infected version of Black Cat, and Mary Jane and Peter team up to take her down. Once she's defeated, Mary Jane and S.H.I.E.L.D. take her away to get medical attention, and Spider-Man leaves to finish the job. Now the Vulture is infected and reveals that the entire reason the symbiote invasion is even taking place is because Spider-Man took a part of them. The old man tries to sabotage the bomb, but of course, our hero stops him and sets it off, destroying all the symbiotes across the city, including his own. It's not quite over yet though, as a number of symbiotes escape to the helicarrier hovering around the city. Spider-Man makes his way up to the flying fortress and is horrified to find out that the Venom symbiote has grown into an enormous beast. While trying to fight the massive thing, Peter tries to call out to Eddie, appealing to his humanity and trying to convince him to gather his strength and overcome the will of the symbiote creature. Eddie musters everything he has left and actually makes a pretty great self-sacrifice here.
Get out of here, Parker! My flesh, my mind, my heart. Time to die like a man.
the symbiote threat is gone, and Spider-Man monologues his way out of the story. Well, wow. It's been a pretty long time since I've seen a Spider-Man story this heavy and serious, and I know a lot of people don't like that, and it's okay. It's nice that we're all allowed to have our own opinions, but I for one welcome using the characters in a few stories that really try to up the ante a bit. I'm still kind of confused as to how Peter stole a part of the symbiote since the rest of it didn't seem all that happy about it, but honestly, there's still some details from the comics that could be used as an explanation if you look deep enough into it. I think it's a fun idea, though I wish we could have gotten a few more big Marvel characters in there, and this concept art of a symbiote Moonlight makes me really sad we never got to see that in action, but what we have here is a cool and compelling concept with clear and drastic stakes that take full advantage of just how scary symbiotes can be. And the story isn't all dark all the time. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here that I wouldn't exactly describe as kid-friendly, but they don't forget about the core of Spider-Man's character, so this game is far from humorless.
Man dressed like you right now don't get to talk about how I used to dress.
Still, you wore a tiara.
It was a headband. A headband.
There are some elements of Spider-Man's portrayal in this game that I'm not crazy about, though. It's not just me, right? Does anyone else just hate Spider-Man's voice in this game? I don't know what it is about the performance, it just sounds almost whiny. I don't think I have an issue with a single other voice performance in this game, but the main character here probably should have had a priority when it came to casting. No offense to Mike Vaughn, the voice actor for Spider-Man in this game, but in what world did it seem like a good idea to take the voice actor of this character and give it to our friendly neighborhood crime fighter? Actually, his visual design probably should have been given a bit more attention too. Again, I like the way most of the other characters and creatures look in this game. I even like the way the black suit looks on Spidey, but in the red suit, the shaders just feel off. Look at the lighting on his textures, he almost looks like he's made out of plastic, which might not have even been a problem if it wasn't so inconsistent with how the other characters look. So, not crazy about the voice and texture, but I love the way Spider-Man moves in this game. Non-stop motion here, and I can't get enough of this focus on fun, powerful, and rewarding combat. I'm not sure how to segue into this, but man, I love the score in this game. The story and setting to Web of Shadows is big and epic, very similar to the treatment Marvel has given its event comics like Civil War, and the score plays that up appropriately. It sounds great during the action and when just roaming around the city.
So, do I recommend Spider-Man Web of Shadows?
I do. I really do. And no, it's not perfect, but if I can't recommend a game just because it has a few flaws here and there, then I would just recommend you stop playing games altogether right now. The textures aren't always great, a lot of the dialogue is dodgy at best, and I don't think this voice actor should be let anywhere near the character of Spider-Man again, but I thought the plot was interesting and exciting. I enjoy the pacing of the gameplay, I love the original character designs developed for it, and the sheer amount of fun that I had while playing Web of Shadows is enough to make me suggest the game to more people. I would still recommend playing something like Spider-Man 2 first, but I honestly don't think you would be disappointed with Spider-Man Web of Shadows.
And that was the end of an era. Treyarch just didn't work on Spider-Man games anymore after that. Which is a real shame, but there were still some good things to come. So, in the next video, we'll be taking a look at Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Thanks again for watching, everyone. See you next mission.
Thank you for playing. Would you like to try again?